As Rangers fans, we know that a goaltender is the backbone of a hockey team. At Abundant Wealth Management, we are your financial backbone, offering financial planning, wealth management, tax planning, and estate planning services. To schedule your free consultation, head to www.abundant-wealth.com. That's www.abundant-wealth.com. Abundant Wealth Management. Live, plan, triumph.
You're listening to Rangers Radio, your home for end-to-end coverage of the New York Rangers. With your hosts, Brendan Azoff, Zach Domino, and Steve Pappas. Blue Shirts fans, the puck drops now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rangers Radio. And after last week's episode where we were talking about the negatives and the problems that the Rangers had, of course, they waited until Friday to make the big trade for JT Miller. They couldn't do it Thursday before our episode, accommodate us so we had something else to talk about. But that's the big news. That's the meat and potatoes that Chris Drury wants, and so far, so good. But we're going to talk about Miller. We're going to talk about the last two wins for the Rangers, the upcoming two games, then the Four Nations break. So we're going to dive into all of that on this episode. But before we do, Zook, Steven, how are things going, my guys?
It was obviously the biggest trade that was made in sports this week over the last 7 days.
The NBA is going nuts, man.
No other trade that was made that was bigger than JT Miller to the New York Rangers. I will stand by it. But it is good to be back. I was on the mat last week with the flu, so that was fun. But the episode looked fantastic. I know there's a lot of people in here, so let's see if it was my doing and we get like 10 people that are watching tonight because I'm back. But here we are. I mean, listen, they're in a spot. They're in a position to succeed. That's all you can ask for the way that they started. And they were rewarded with going out and getting JT Miller, and he's been a good asset to start his career, his rejuvenated career with the Rangers. But there's a lot more that needs to be done. I think there are people that are very optimistic about it. There are people that are a little bit more on the.
Oh, he just cut out. Gosh. Well, maybe he wants our views to go back.
Shitty internet. Yeah, let's go.
There he goes. He's back.
We're back.
He's back.
We're back.
What I'll say is I was at the Garden last night. Great game to go to again.
You're 4-0. You got to let the people know.
I'm 4-0, and honestly, I'm part of my wife's dad has a season ticket package, and my wife has two sisters, and their two significant others are also big Rangers fans, so we split it kind of three ways. My first game wasn't until 2025, so I could be the cause of the Rangers having those December woes and not looking too well as the calendar turned. But in the past month and 6 days, I've gone to 4 games. They're 4-0. It started with the Devils overtime win, which some can look at. And look, we're not on a crazy run anymore like we were at the time, but overall and fighting back, that's kind of when it started. But yeah, the vibes were good last night. The vibes were good when the Rangers scored. The vibes went way down when Boston scored 2 goals in literally 13 seconds or whatever it was. But look, this team is nowhere near what they were last year. But I saw enough that I did that thing that I did last year where I placed a live bet during the second intermission. I had a feeling that they were going to come back. I didn't know how they were going to do it, but I literally turned to my wife when we took that penalty, which wait, did we score a goal on was it the Rempe penalty that we scored a shorthanded goal?
Yeah, it wasn't the one that started the third.
What a ridiculous penalty that was. I don't know if you want to nitpick. Maybe he did. That's just one guy being a lot stronger than the other, and Kelly Sutherland hating big people because he's tiny. But I looked at my wife and I said, we're going to score a goal. And even though it was ugly, and even though the pass wasn't great, and even though Mika Zibanejad never once looked at the net, even though the defender was basically giving him a wide open shot, those two guys did what they do. And as much as we want to dog them, they've kind of been still really good on the penalty kill. And yet again, another big goal on special teams, this time coming from a shorthanded goal. But doesn't matter how you do it at this point. Style points out the window. You got to go into each and every game and get 2 points without giving a lot of these other teams one, because we're playing a lot of teams that we're going up against. But we'll go into it. But all last night did was make it that the whole season comes down to these next 2 games. You got to get 4 points. 3 points, you're not dead, but realistically, you got to get 4. Not only for, making the playoffs with this squad, but I think these next 2 games are really going to tell the story about what type of calls Chris Drury is making during that 14-day break for the 4 nations. If we go and we win these next 2 games, I don't know. We'll have to look at the standings. We'll probably be at least within 4 and have jumped some other teams where there's probably only maybe 1 team in between us at that point. But this team is a lot better with JT Miller than they were before. They're not even close to a complete product, but I think it's a move that definitely sparked them for sure.
Mika hasn't looked to shoot on a 2-on-1 in probably 4 years, so that shouldn't have been a surprise to you.
It's like not like he didn't even like the defenders know it at this point. Like there's a book on him at this point. Like you have a book on everybody in the NHL, especially someone who's been in the league for that long. And yeah, when he's on a 2-on-1, they don't even play the puck. They play the man on the other side and just give him the net because they know he's literally going to force a pass. And that's the real problem with this Rangers team in general. And I hate to harp on it because I'm actually feeling pretty positive about the team. There's always a ceiling with a team that's completely pass first. They really don't have that killer instinct. I'm hoping that JT Miller slowly wears off on some people and takes control. But this is a team that passes until they're literally forced to shoot. Yeah, it's ridiculous the amount of slot shots that we could take that we're passing it to a wide open guy in the corner just because he's wide open. But his angle, it's impossible to score a goal. But this team loves passing for some reason. But look, I don't care how we do it. I don't care how ugly it looks. I don't care what the analytics say at this point. We got, less than 30 games? Oh, wait, less than 20 games? Less than 30 games?
No, they got 29 games left.
29 games, and you just got to lie, cheat, and steal to get 2 points in every single game. That's the name of the game. At the beginning of the season, we had certain expectations that I know we talked a lot about. We got to see how this team plays because we were just automatically, the playoffs is going to be easy. At least the second round. We better make the Eastern Conference final at the minimum. So it's all about how the team looks because we had those expectations. But now throw what you thought about this team coming into the season out the window, and it's lie, cheat, and steal time and take 2 points at a time.
Well, let's talk about the big trade. So the Rangers acquired JT Miller. They also got a prospect and Eric Brandstrom, who is a Zach Jones-esque defenseman. So we know how many minutes he'll be playing for the New York Rangers, exactly 0. But honestly, the return that they wound up getting, I think if either one of us on this was looking at a trade for JT Miller, we would have thought that they would have to give up a couple of pieces to only get JT Miller back. So the fact that there were a couple other pieces that came in addition to him was a pretty good trade. I said it at the beginning that I love Philip Edel as a person, and I think his style was he would have been a very, very, very good hockey player had the injuries not riddled his career early on. And listen, he still might have one of those careers where he's able to figure out how to stay healthy and become a very productive player. But that could not be the guy that held you back from getting somebody like JT Miller. And through 3 games, he's kind of exemplified exactly what the Rangers had needed up until this point. A guy that's willing to get in on the forecheck, go to the dirty areas, while still having the skill to create and score goals. And I think that when you look at how he's complemented, now, I know I wasn't alone on this panel. I don't know if you guys want to shy away from it, but as soon as I saw the line combinations come out where I saw Mika Zibanejad on the right side of Miller and Panarin, I was like, that's probably not what I would have done. But, kudos to Laviolette for trying that out because it actually woke up Artemi Panarin a little bit. It woke up Mika Zibanejad as much as you can wake him up this season where he's a little bit more involved. I mean, his chart the other night was the top on the Rangers, even though eye test wise, I didn't quite see that. But all you need is him to start getting points, right? And I think that goal where he tapped it in at the goal line a couple of games ago, I don't know, I think it was against Vegas, where he's in that area. I think that is something that can get him going. He made a nice pass to Panarin last night to set up the first goal for the Rangers. They've been involved in every game. That line has at least had 1 goal in all 3 games that Miller's played. So you could say whatever you want about the trade. You give up a first-round pick that's top 13 protected. It's probably going to be Vancouver's pick this year. I don't think the Rangers are finishing in the bottom 13. But JT Miller is under contract.
Isn't it Pittsburgh's pick now?
That is Pittsburgh's pick
Yeah.
now.
Didn't they
Correct.
send
They
it to
traded it
Pittsburgh?
right away for Marcus Patterson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You brought up
Oh.
a good point. Like, it's not just a this year move. Like, you don't feel like, oh my God, like it's a waste like we've seen in the past if you don't even make it because JT Miller. Like, I'm just excited that this is the guy for the future that I hope to build around, and I hope players follow because he did it again last night. Like, I know Mika had the pass to Panarin, who had an unreal shot, but that's all JT Miller. And he's the only guy on the team that could make that play. There was one of the coolest plays, probably the coolest play I've ever seen live, and one of the coolest plays I've ever seen in hockey, where he literally caught the puck in the air, threw it down the ice, and chased it down. Like, I'm not saying he's the best player in the league, but the Rangers have literally nobody that has the combination of physicality and skill that JT Miller has. And you slowly, very, very slowly see it, wearing off on other players. To this point, though, the one thing that I want to say, because you brought up the line combination, is, moving Mika to the wing and moving JT Miller up and Panarin on that line, the middle six really hasn't done anything. And that's where we got a lot from Hedo. Like, Johnny Brodzinski has made that line a black hole. The second line, nowhere to be found with Lafreniere and Trocheck. Honestly, our fourth line has been far and away our second best line. And that happened again yesterday. Like, even at the beginning of the game when we weren't getting much chances, Carrick and Rempe were keeping the puck in the zone. And I've been someone, and I think all of us have been someone who we were kind of done with Rempe at the beginning of the year because he was mostly a shtick player. He didn't really bring anything on the hockey side. And look, he may never be anything more than a fourth liner. But I'm seeing a lot of NHL quality plays from him where he definitely has a role, where the other stuff that he brings to the table only has any value if you can put him out there for more than 2 minutes a game. And he's been playing really, really, really solid net neutral hockey. And if Matt Rempe's playing net neutral hockey, there will always be a spot for him on the NHL. So we're really a first and fourth line team right now where we're going to have to upgrade if this team is expecting to go anywhere. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Drury does. But I think a 3C, I think we all think probably a first line left defenseman to put with Fox, which I don't have any notion or hope that they're going to do that because they never seem to make the right decision with that. But if we're going to do anything, I think it's to upgrade the 3C to really make us a lot deeper down the middle.
I just saw something today about we've thrown this name out there countless times regarding the Rangers. I don't know where he would fit in the 3C category, but Trevor Zegras is on the block again in Anaheim. I don't know how interested anybody would honestly be. It was funny. I was looking at his stats this week, and his first 2 years, he was 65 points, and it just looked like this kid was going to be, a really good guy in the NHL. Then all of a sudden gets hurt last year, had 5 goals, I think, last year, has 5 this year. Like, he's not necessarily a guy to look at, but it is a guy that if you want to take a flyer on a 23-year-old, it would be interesting to see if you throw him on the third line center. Honestly, Brendan, you're right. When I saw that Miller came in, my immediate thought was Miller 1C, Zibanejad 3C, and was not thrilled that it wasn't that. But listen, I mean, it's worked. You see, they got shit pumped in the game against Boston the first game, but that first 10 minutes with Panarin and Miller and Zibanejad, I hadn't seen those two move like that in weeks and if not months. When they put him into the lineup, and he's been everything you could ask for through 3 games in JT Miller. He's been forechecking, he has been creating, he's been finishing. I'm a huge proponent of JT Miller being on the Rangers, and I tweeted it out. It just feels like the guy at the top leading this team has no clue where he wants the team to go, which is frustrating. But you've got $3 million at the cap at the deadline in cap space, roughly, give or take. And if you are 4 or 5 points out, 3, 4, 5 points out of a playoff spot, there's no reason to not go for it with that kind of money, and especially with the cap going up. So I'd be interested to see what Chris Drury is going to do. I'm a little bit more hesitant with what this team is capable of, I think, than especially Zook is. Because, again, they haven't won 3 in a row since November. It is February the 6th. They've won back-to-back games a couple times, and that's it. It's still not, the sample size is not big enough for me to be like, oh, we're fully back. It's just kind of an average team for me. And again, we're not moving the goalposts. We're not sitting here saying, well, now because they sucked for so long, they get a pass because now they're playing better. No, it's still Stanley Cup or bust for this team. And if it's not that, it's just abject failure for this season.
Yeah, and you talk about the 3C and how that might be the problem right now, and I think that they have 3 centers on their team. We can't forget that, right? You have Miller, Zibanejad, and you have Trocheck. So the reality is they could just take that line, break it up a little bit, and bump it down and have your 3 centers. But that line is playing well. So if that line continues to produce and play well, that's not going to happen because offense has been challenging at points this season for the Rangers. Now, there are a few names out there that I'm very interested in. The top one is Dylan Cousins, but based on the acquisition of JT Miller, Cousins is under contract for another 5 years at $7 million. I don't see how that's going to work this year long term for the Rangers. But the Rangers have had trades with Colorado in the past. They've had some dealings with them. You go back to Alexander Georgiev. They have $16.5 million in deadline cap space. So they have room to work with still, especially if you send players back in return. Casey Middlestad's on the block. That's a skill guy. That's somebody that, defensively is a question mark, I know. But if you're looking to actually lengthen the lineup in terms of skill and offense, that's an interesting ad. Then you got, I think under the radar, Ryan Donato in Chicago on a bad team is actually having one of his best seasons. I think he's got 15 goals, 15 assists. Unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. Why not plug him into your third line center role? It's a low risk, high reward type of move. Worst case, doesn't work out, he gets scratched, or you wind up moving on from him at the end of the season. That's somebody you probably don't have to give up a lot to get. Why not take a flyer on him? And then I don't think it's going to happen, but Yanni Gordon, Oliver Bjorkstrand on Seattle would really entice me to add into the middle 6 of this lineup. That's a right wing and a center. I can't imagine 2 trades in one season from the Seattle Kraken and the New York Rangers, but there are names out there that you don't have to break the bank to get. So there's still options. But like you said, 2 games back-to-back this weekend. They play Friday at home against Pittsburgh. They play Saturday in Columbus. They have 2 more games after that meeting against Columbus. So those are all integral matchups, especially in this wild card race. And then you have the 4 Nations break, and there's a huge decision looming for Chris Drury because they're in that bubble where realistically they should finish the season better than all those teams and make the playoffs. But when you look at this track record this season, I don't know how you can go 100% into that theory and say it's going to happen. And they have pieces on their team like Riley Smith, Ryan Lindgren, who are unrestricted free agents that you probably should move. So I don't know if those guys get moved in separate deals and they still acquire, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing some buying and selling. And knowing the Rangers, if they're within that 4-point range, which they are right now, I just have a hard time believing that they're going to be strictly sellers.
Here's the thing. To your point about Dylan Cousins, and again, this is purely speculation because his name is not linked to the Rangers. His name's linked to 5 other different teams, and his name has been shopped around in Buffalo for 3-4 months at this point. At least 3 to 4 months this year. The cap goes up $7.5 million next year. So the thought would be, how do you fit him in this year? Which you could move pieces around to figure that out. But that's basically there's your $7.5 million right there. It goes right into a guy like Dylan Cousins, who's, again, a young guy who's has potential. I think in the right environment could be a very good player. And it's almost like you didn't have to break the bank. Like you didn't have to do anything because that's just the number that the cap goes up by, which is, something we're not used to. None of us are used to the cap going up $7 million in one off season. Again, the thought is, how do you fit him in this year? But again, if this team is going to succeed, you can talk about the middle 6 all you want. It's going to be the top guys because we have seen the whole year the top guys haven't been the top guys. You talk about Panarin, barely at a point per game. He's maybe going to hit 80 points. He's been better. He's looked better since JT Miller's come in the lineup. Quick sample size of 3 games, so it could just be the bump of a new guy. But if you're not getting production from your top 6, meaning your Laughs, your Trocheks, your Panarins, your Zibanejad's, your Kreiders, you're shit. You're done. Like you can't sit here and say, well, the team failed because the middle 6 failed or the bottom 6 failed. No, it's because the guys at the top didn't do their job. And that's the only, we got into the argument this week about Adam Fox. If you're sitting here bitching about Adam Fox, you're a loser. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous. The guy is literally tied to a human anchor. Like it is ridiculous. If you see Adam Fox and think he's the issue with this team, fucking go home. Please just grab your ball and go home. I'm sick of it. You can't
in the same breath say that Lindgren's the worst defenseman on the team and say Adam Fox deserves to be traded.
100%.
It doesn't make sense. Is he having the year that we expected him to have? No, but he's still 8th in scoring amongst defensemen. He's still statistically the best defenseman on the Rangers by a mile. The whole team is having a down year, and people are like, oh, the Rangers shouldn't have this many players having a down year, but they are. It gets contagious, so he's not immune to that. And even in the down year, he's still top 10 in the league in defenseman scoring. And he's not that much of a liability.
Goals, Brendan, but he doesn't score goals. So
you don't need that. He creates goals. Listen, the Lafreniere goal against Vegas is more of an Adam Fox goal and a JT Miller goal than it is a Lafreniere, even though he gets credited for it. JT Miller drives the net, Fox makes the feed. I think people have to stop looking at single statistical columns, but it blows my mind that that's still a discussion. How many teams would jump on him if Adam Fox is available?
But Brendan,
everyone.
Two goals, Brendan. How do you? I can't even play devil's advocate without fucking laughing at the absurdity that it is.
You say, he doesn't have to score a goal, but he's not as good defensively. Well, every time he's going into a corner,
it's objectively
there's
wrong.
Nobody in front of the net.
Objectively, it's wrong too. He's been fine defensively. Again, it's who do you have on your other side as your pairing? Like I had somebody in a comment section. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I love going through the comments sometimes because the scholars that are in there are insane. So someone talk about Adam Fox not being a good defenseman or something like that, and it's like, dude, you're completely wrong. But I love sitting on the side of the fence where it's I'm right, you're wrong, and you can't do anything to convince me otherwise. But also, this team as a whole goes, and it's not a crazy thing to say, but they go as Shesterkin goes. And you see in the games that he's on, they're a much better team. He was pretty good last night. He was pretty good against he didn't play against Vegas. Wasn't great against the other in the other Boston game, and they probably should have been closer in that game than they were if they could have just gotten a timely save. But as long as Shesterkin is playing well, this team's going to have a chance. But we've seen the ceiling that this organization has when you rely on your goaltender dragging you into the fight.
And the Four Nations kind of works best for the Rangers in this chase down the stretch because we know when Igor comes back off a break, he kind of comes out hot a lot of times. So hope to get a little bump maybe that first week, those first 10 days after Four Nations where he just stands on his head. And to be honest, I think, because I'm one of them, I think there's a lot of Rangers fans that don't watch that much other NHL teams. So like when a lot of people were making these arguments, I looked at the scorecards that you posted, Steven, of all the other top defensemen that are getting paid near the top of what Adam Fox is. And there's some guys with defensive scores in the teens. Like Adam Fox's defensive, there's not many good offensive defensemen that also play defense. That's like the meta's offense in today's NHL. You got to be able to produce and move the puck on offense as a defenseman and not be a turnstile on defense and be able to just put your body and get in space. The other side of it is just a defensive defenseman that can't provide anything on offense. And those guys are just not the meta at all in the NHL. Those guys are like the last people you want, maybe as like a third pairing or a second pairing or next to another guy that can produce offense. But in a weird, I know it's such a weird way, but being skilled offensively is as important or more important than being skilled defensively, because I don't even know what that means anymore. It's just putting yourself in a good position to make plays. There's no really, shut down anymore. So it's just ridiculous that people are nitpicking on him. And like, if you just watch, like, there's things that he does on a night in and night out basis that no one else can do. His IQ is off the chart. Like you said about that loft goal, it was an Adam Fox goal. And sure, when he goes up against some bigger forwards behind the net, he may lose some board battles. Like,
He doesn't have to be physical. We
Yeah,
went
there's
over this.
That whole
no
argument makes no
is a
sense to me.
perfect player. Like, it doesn't make
Brendan,
any
you
sense.
weren't here. You weren't here when it was me and Zook that had this. I had this comparison. It's like saying Rempe needs to be a goal scorer. It's just it's you're asking
It's not
somebody to
his
do something
role.
they can't do.
Yeah,
Nobody in Vancouver is asking Quinn Hughes to
nitpicking.
lay people
Yeah.
out.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
hang
just-
on. I'm glad you bring him up. I'm glad you bring up Quinn Hughes because if he can't go, and I kind of want to transition this into Four Nations, but if he can't go, what do you think the odds of Keandre Miller getting a call in that spot are?
Ugh. It's
Isn't
tough.
Drury the GM? Did I read that last
He's
night?
the assistant GM.
Yeah, then probably over 50%.
I just can't. I can't envision a team having 5 Rangers on it.
I was about to say, if that was the case, you could have a line of Trocheck, Miller, Kreider, and a deep pair of Fox and Miller. Which, by the way, Fox
They
and Miller
get blown up.
Fox and Miller is one of the best defensive pairings in the
No,
league.
And that's what Drury's about, right? Drury just loves these
No.
American
But
players.
see, you
and he
know,
absolutely
Zook,
loves
that if
them.
they were going to take another Rangers defenseman and Drury has a say,
Be
it's going to
fucking
be
Ryan Lindgren. Be
And he's
fucking
gonna sell-
Ryan
and he's
Lindgren.
gonna sell everyone on that fact. And that brings me back to what you said before, Brendan, when you brought up Lindgren and Riley Smith. The Rangers are in like a really unique spot where it doesn't matter like what they want to do for guys like that. Like, you don't lose anything by giving up Lindgren and Riley Smith if you're going for it or if you're selling. So guys like that, they should always be looking to entertain moving. Like, Lindgren's literally an addition by subtraction.
Well, you guys,
We'll
we
say
just
this
talked
a
about
million
this, though.
times. Like, Zach Jones played last night when he hasn't played in years. It seems like you wouldn't know that. You would think he's on the ice most games. And I don't think he was amazing defensively. Laviolette seemed to think that he was aggressive defensively, which I saw. But just him moving he got the puck behind the net and there was like forwards forechecking and he was just gliding past them and skating with the puck and making these really easy passes that guys like Euro and Lindgren can't make. Like, it's just such a benefit to have puck moving defensemen. And with the Rangers being the exact opposite of that, besides Fox and at times Miller, it's such a breath of fresh air to watch a guy like Jones play. And yeah, he wasn't great defensively, but I agree with he wasn't spectacular defensively, but I agree with Laviolette. He was very aggressive and he was going after guys and trying to get physical with them, where I don't know how many times you need to sit him on the bench for 3 weeks, have him play and him show you that he's definitely an NHL defenseman, just then to put him in the press box again. And I don't know if they're going to end up trading him for a name like Zegras, because I know they're looking for a defenseman. So, like, if you were telling me it was Zach Jones, a middle-level prospect for Zegras, I'm fine with that. But Jones has to do something for this team, either playing or get us back someone that plays, because I'm sick and tired of watching him be really, really good. And as we say with Lindgren bringing Fox down, every time Jones plays, Schneider seems to have an amazing game, which has something to do with Jones. And this guy's just got to play more. And it's crazy that we're playing guys, they're playing better than other people, and then they find their way back to the press box because of what guys have done in past years or for relationships.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about it with the JT Miller trade already, that Vancouver took that first round pick and traded it right away for a defenseman and Marcus
But
Pettersson.
this draft is very bad. Do you guys know more about that?
It's not deep. It's
Okay.
top heavy, very top heavy. If you have something outside of the top 7, you're guessing pretty much. But what I will say is you just mentioned that the Rangers could move Lindgren, could move Smith. You're not getting a first for either one of those guys, but if you get a third or a fourth or whatever the pick is, you could then package that with something else in a trade to get somebody better. And you talked about Zach Jones. I thought Zach Jones was aggressive. I thought Zach Jones stepped and didn't pinch inappropriately. I thought he was, keen on his movements. If he's able to do that, and he's the one that can replace Lindgren's spot, and you put Miller and Fox together, who have statistically been one of the better pairs in the league this season, then I don't know how you don't go out and do that. But again, it's whether the Rangers will do the smart thing or not. And before we start diving into Four Nations and continue this talk, I do want to mention that they had back-to-back third period comebacks. They've had one all year prior to that. And against the Vegas Golden Knights, Jonathan Quick got win number 400. So kudos to him. The first 400
American
goaltender. That's
Yeah.
what I was looking for. First American goalie to get to 400. He won't be the last because Connor Hellebuck will be there before we know it. But it's kind of crazy.
Made him work for that 400th win.
Yeah,
he
it
had
took
like
him a month.
7 chances.
A month.
He had a little
start.
bit to do with that also, but the team did make him work for it.
I will say that when they first signed him, all I could think about was
I said, when are they going to cut?
Final.
Remember we had Colin Stevenson on, Brendan? And the only questions I was asking him was like, how long is like Quick's leash until like they cut him?
He was like, I can't answer these questions. But I all I thought about was the Stanley Cup final. And I just was like, I don't know how he can win over Rangers fans when that, to me, Jonathan Quick was the LA Kings back then. But, it's only been 2 years, not even 2 full years. And I think that he's been, first of all, last year, he saved the Rangers bacon a couple of times. He's done the same thing this year, hasn't been to the same extent, but he's been a great New York Ranger. And I don't know if you guys watched the TNT broadcast last night when they were talking about the Vezina versus the Stanley Cup, him and Hank. And Hank was like, "You want to trade?" And I was like, "Oh, that broke my heart, man." I was like, "Oh, no, he deserved it." But listen, Jonathan Quick's had a great career. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And 400 wins is not too shabby. I think he's the 15th or 16th goaltender all time to actually reach that mark. So pretty cool.
It was great that he was able to get that. He deserves it. I will forever have hate in my heart for Jonathan Quick just because of that.
Yep.
But that is shrinking day by day every time that he is, he's put in front of the media and he talks and he plays, because he's been a fantastic Ranger over the last 2 years. But it is funny to see him and Lundqvist interact, especially knowing the backstory there. But just to be able, I think American hockey in general right now is on such a heater, and it sort of segues into Four Nations, what we'll talk about. But American hockey is on such heater right now. If back-to-back World Juniors, you get a guy like Quick that has this major accomplishment, and now all of a sudden you have the chance to, there are some interesting lineup choices and interesting players that have been chosen for Team USA and interesting guys that have been let off. Obviously it actually might work in the not work because he got hurt, but Tage Thompson might not be able to play anyway. When people talk about losing him for Kreider, he might not be able to play anyway after that hit, and the interesting reaction that the Sabres had after that hit from Stefan Noesen. But I am very excited to see exactly what Team USA is going to do. It was the first time we're seeing professional United States hockey players play at the highest level since what? Was it 2014? Is it been 10 years?
It's been 10 years for the Olympics. I'm trying to think about when.
2016
was.
2016 World Cup of Hockey.
Yeah.
So either way, it's been 8 years since we've seen best on best, and
we've never seen Austin Matthews play for Team USA at this level. He was playing for the Team North America under 25. It's going to be good hockey, and I think that for Rangers fans especially, there's 6 players that are going to be there now that you include JT Miller
and
in
the
that.
Team sucks. It doesn't make no sense.
I don't understand some of the roster construction behind those teams. And then you got like Steven Valiquette talking about how Logan Thompson didn't get picked for Team Canada because of DeBoer and Cassidy had some beef with him. It's just like that shouldn't really be getting in the way of these types of tournaments, but it's going to be fun to watch elite level hockey without really having any type of stress, considering there's no playoff push and things like that. And, if this was the Olympics, I would have significantly more of like USA. I want to see them win, but this is just like, to me, more of a fun thing. You got round robin play and then 2 teams go for the championship. Like there's no real tournament pole play, playoff style atmosphere, but it's going to be fun. And I think it's going to
if USA's in there, I need red, white.
I want to see them win, but I'm not sitting here devastated if they don't. Whereas if this was the Olympics or World Juniors, I'm invested. I'm like, USA, when they get knocked out early, it hurts. This one, I don't think it will as much. And you could look at the 4 Rangers on the team and say it's probably why. But I think that, when you look at the teams, USA's goaltending is a distinct advantage in this tournament. They got 3 of the top goaltenders probably in the tournament because Russia's not playing. And I think when you look at the top goalies in the league outside of the Americans right now, you're going Russian. So it's a huge advantage. But, Finland's always sneaky good defensively. They're always tough to play against. Canada's just loaded up front. I don't know.
Light the tournament up, by the way.
Which team?
Kako.
Kako.
Light the
Well,
tournament.
no, because now there's pressure playing for your country, so he'll probably go back to his shell.
That's fair.
See,
I'm
people that are
okay.
sitting
Listen,
there,
no. Let me
I'm not
put
getting
this
into this. I'm not.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy for him because
I am too.
I said it as soon as they traded him that he's going to go nuts, and everyone's like, "Oh, would you look at that? Kako's going." It's like every rational Ranger fan sat here and said, "As soon as you trade him, he will figure it out."
It
It
didn't
was
work here. It did not work
Organizational
here.
failure for Capo Kako.
It was not going to work.
Said it since before the trade. Organizational failure, but I didn't mean to cut you off. Continue with.
And we
the-
got
No,
Will Borgen, which is great.
That's it. I think Will Borgen's been great for the Rangers. I think that Capo Kako was never going to work with where he was taken in the draft, the situation he was put into with the amount of wing depth that they had and signed, and just the fact that there was the immense pressure in New York with the media and the fans building on him year after year that he did not reach that potential. So he needed a change of scenery. If the Rangers kept him, it wouldn't have worked the same way it's working there. So good for him and good for the Rangers that they moved on, because now you can just get past that. And I think that that's a big thing for some of these kids. It's like, you can get drafted into the best situation or the worst situation. And I don't think it's a Rangers can't develop people, because they have plenty of people that they've developed through their system that are playing right now. And, people are comparing, Kakos to the other elite second round picks. And we all thought he might be at that capability. But all it takes is one look at his skating ability to realize that when you think of the upper echelon of talent in the league, they could all skate. They all have blazing speed. He never had that. And that's just something that he might become a solid 50-point guy in Seattle, but it's not the level of a second-round pick that you want. And it's the same exact thing that's kind of happening to Lafreniere. I think Lafreniere has a lot more skill, but he doesn't have that 1-2 step ability where when he makes that move, he could pull away. And that's why he's probably never going to reach that upper echelon of talent in the league, but you just need him to be solid.
Here's my question, and it's a hypothetical because obviously Russia's not in this tournament, and we don't know when Russia is going to be in particularly any national tournament. But Igor Shesterkin's not the starting goaltender for Russia.
It would be him, Vasilevsky, or Bobrovsky. I don't think.
And I'm taking
gets it.
Vasilevsky in a big game 100 times out of 100.
It would be interesting to see, because Bobrovsky started the last time that the Olympics happened, where in Sochi.
He's old.
I don't think Bobrovsky gets the start. I think Vasilevsky would probably be the default number one just because of everything he's won.
And I think
I don't know.
Bobrovsky's too. And I think Bobrovsky's too.
I don't think he would be.
No,
It's tough. It's the same thing with the USA. Like Connor Hellebuck's the number one because of the seasons that he's put together over the last couple of years. But Ottinger and Swayman sitting behind him, it's like you can make a case for all of them, because both Ottinger and Swayman have better numbers in big games than Hellebuck does. And then you look at the Russian team, all three of those goalies have good numbers regardless of when they're playing. It's really hard to kind of pick that. I think you go with the hot hand.
And the other crazy part is Sorokin's not even on that list. Sorokin's on a heater right now, and he's not even on that list.
Their goaltending is top tier.
Russian goaltending's nuts. But I will say I'm very excited. Zook, if you're trying to speak, none of us can hear you. Still can't hear you.
His mic's toast. We're trying to toss it to you, but it's just there's no sound coming out, so I don't know. But
you were muted, you jackass.
Oh, I had to unplug it and plug it back in.
Oh, okay, all right.
He's not exactly like him, but one of the people that just needs to honestly mimic JT Miller is Lafreniere. Like, I think he gets too much into the skill game sometimes.
Think he has it.
I think he does. Like, I think he does, and I think we've talked about it in the playoffs where we've seen that grit from him, and he tries to forecheck. He just really doesn't know how to. But if he ever decided to not try and make these fancy moves, which he actually can enter the zone pretty good, and just literally toss it behind the net and go forecheck, I think that really could unlock a part of his game where people wouldn't know that every time he's trying to enter the zone, he's doing a deke. And he made a nice one last night where he got off a decent wrister. And I'm not saying that has to be his total game, but I think in order to learn the forecheck, JT Miller is an interesting guy to learn from. And I feel like it was similar. Like when we drafted him, Miller was more of like a lot, obviously less skilled and more meat and potatoes than Lafreniere when he came in, but it was a lot of skill. It was a lot of speed. It was a lot of skating. And over time, he really became that tougher, more grittier player that just to have another thing in your toolbox for a guy that we know he has the skill. We know he's shown up in the playoffs before, but that extra ability to be another guy who can forecheck really on a team that doesn't forecheck at all besides JT Miller, it would be such a big difference for this team because it's like, I think last night was, I don't know if it was a joke, but I think it was like the third or fourth goal we've scored after we caused a turnover on the forecheck. It's just such a big part of the game. And Loft really needs to learn because he actually really has no idea when he forechecks. Most of the time he's going in backwards, which is crazy. He goes in with his back, but he's got the body and he's got the want to, which a lot of guys on the Rangers don't even have. So that's a starting point. So like you're saying, get a little stronger, go to the weight room. And from all intents and purposes, JT Miller is an asshole, but he's a guy who he does want to teach. Like you see him on the ice, he's telling people what to do. He's giving people instructions. I'm sure if you wanted to follow JT Miller around the offseason in the weight room and saw what he did, he'd be happy to have you. So I think that's just a good guy to learn from, not to ultimately completely mimic his game, because I get what you're saying, Brendan, but I feel like the missing piece of Loft's game is something that he could potentially learn from JT Miller. And you throw that in with the skill, and you got yourself a player that, with the cap going up, could potentially be worth the contract that we gave him. Because I think we'll all admit, since we gave him that contract, he hasn't shown at all that he's worth what we gave him.
He's a better, more skilled player, but you're seeing that a lot with Connor Bedard right now. Connor Bedard's kind of got one move and one year into the zone, and it's not working. And it's, he's getting his points, but he's turning the puck over a ton. He doesn't need to be the most physical guy, obviously, but he's hurting his team by not being able to chip and chase and flip it behind the defense and go in and get it, instead of trying to be, the junior hero and try and go around NHL guys, which just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that it's not just a Loft issue; it's a Rangers issue. You can look at all the lines, and before Miller came, say the same thing. There's something to be said about simplifying the game at certain points, where the other team now all of a sudden has to question whether you are going to chip and chase and they're going to get hit, or I'm going to make a move, because they all have the skill to make the moves at the blue line. The problem is that's the only thing that they're trying to do, because they want to create off the rush so bad that it's very easy to stay up at the blue line as a defenseman and defend. But Wayne Gretzky said the most dangerous guy on the ice is the guy without the puck, right? And I think that there's a lot of Rangers that have to remember that statement, because right now there's a lot of guys, Panarin, you got, Lafreniere is trying to do the same thing, that they're trying to only create when they have the puck. But if you have that ability to develop the hockey IQ and know where to go, right? You could look at I don't know if you stayed up and watched the Edmonton game last night, but Connor McDavid in overtime, they're on the power play. He gets a little pass, skates full speed at the defenseman, so now they have to come at him. And Zach Hyman just creeps to the back post. He knows where he has to be, tips it in. Vincent Trocheck on that goal on the power play, or at the end of the power play, found his way to the back post. You just have to get open. If you put yourself in dangerous scoring positions without the puck will find you, and that's where your offensive stats come from. I think right now Lafreniere is trying so hard to make those highlight reel plays and kind of mimic what he did against Florida, where he went end-to-end and had that crazy goal. He doesn't have to do that all the time. His first couple of goals in a couple of years in this league, he was doing the backdoor tap-ins. He was doing the Kreider type of thing, going to the front of the net. His goal against Vegas, he found that soft spot in the defense, got the pass, scored. That's what he has to do. I know that line depends on him to enter the zone, but there are times where if he chipped it in, Vincent Trocheck's that type of Miller player where he's going to go get it. You find that soft spot in the defense, and his numbers will improve. But that is not just a him thing. That is a Zibanejad, a Panarin thing, and Panarin's been doing it. He drives me crazy. I know how good he is, and I know how good he is with the puck. But every once in a while, man, make the simple play. Just get to the red line, get it deep. Let Miller crash the forecheck, and you're going to reap the rewards from it. It just has to start to happen, especially if they find a way into the playoffs.
The hope is Panarin's smart enough, though, and I'll give him that much, that credit, where I think he's going to learn the type of player or know the type of player that JT Miller is. And just from, we know he has a crazy good hockey IQ. Whether he uses it or not sometimes is the question that we can ask. But I think when he just sees how unbelievably useful and aggressive JT Miller is on those forechecks, it's just going to lead him to, dump it in there and really free himself up. Like the goal last night, he just found a spot, not even by trying, by happenstance, because of what happens when you forecheck the way JT Miller does. And you got to think, as good and as smart as a player as Artemi Panarin is, if something works time after time, he's going to try it. On some of the lines that he's been on, he hasn't really had that guy to do that. So maybe he hasn't seen like the need to dump and chase, because it would just be the other team would get the puck and then he would have to play defense, which we know he has no interest in doing. So the hope is he's smart enough to learn who he's playing with. But yeah, if Loft learns that skill and you're building a future where JT Miller's on the first line, Loft's on the second line, and Will Cooley's on the third line, you got some dogs that you can dump and chase with a team where we've said for years, even when they were good, that was never their identity. It was kind of a little more finesse. It was kind of goaltending. It was scoring big goals on special teams. But if the Rangers could ever just be an average or slightly below average forechecking team, like we've said with 5-on-5 in the past, it would just unlock so much. Like there's so many teams that are less skilled than the Rangers that just pin us in our zone because they're forechecking, because they're aggressive, because they're being physical. The Rangers have the skill. It's just a mentality that they have to introduce, that if they ever could, and this guy JT Miller being their leader could be the cause of it, it would unlock so much. Like you're saying, with this free open ice that these players can kind of just glide into and have these open shots from the slot. And we saw it last night with the first goal from Panarin, how it worked.
I think that there is an identity crisis, and that's kind of what Drury's trying to fix by adding Miller. If you look at how he's trying to restructure the team with the big fourth line, that type of mentality where you have to forecheck, because the Rangers were playing a transition game that worked at times for them because of the skill they had, but they never had the team speed to really make it as effective as it should be, like an Edmonton can, where every time they have a rush, they're coming at you in waves of speed that the Rangers just don't have on their roster. So they were in between styles. They weren't strong enough to play the postseason grind style that wound up happening later on in rounds, but they also were too skilled to stay away from and realize that they have to adapt away from that transition skill finesse game. And it's kind of what they're looking to change. But before we wrap up, there's 2 games left before the Four Nations break. Back-to-back starting tomorrow. They are home against the Penguins, then Saturday in Columbus, the final game before the 2-week break. Predictions. We did this last week without Steven, and they wound up winning 2 out of 3. So take that as you will. But
is that what you guys picked? Was it 2 out of 3 last week?
We actually picked for all of us. We said that you would have the worst record possible, so we gave that to you. And then I think we both picked.
I went 1-1-1.
I think I had 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll throw the curveball and say 2-0. I think they beat Pittsburgh, and I think they beat Columbus. I think they're playing well right now. They've got the bump, and it would be very peak Rangers to play well going into a two-week break where you don't play anymore, where you really find it just to go into 2 weeks of not playing games. But I'm more excited for Four Nations. I'll be there Wednesday and Thursday. I'll be doing this show from Montreal from my hotel on Thursday. So it should be good. I'm very excited. I've never seen Sidney Crosby before. I'm trying to think. Never seen Austin Matthews before. So, I mean, there are a ton of other guys that I've never seen that I'm looking forward to. But also the city of Montreal, I've never been. So
really,
I've been told nothing but good things.
The only thing you're American.
The only thing I am worried about is trying to navigate the subway in a language that I can't speak. So
fair.
We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
I'm gonna go 2-0 also. I'm going to go 2-0. I think we're going to – I hate being so confident, but I think we're going to handle Pittsburgh on Friday. I just think we're better than them. Saturday is an interesting one. Saturday is going to have playoff-type vibes with the meaning of the game and the fact that it's right before the break. And, you got literally nothing else to look forward to for 2 weeks unless you're, obviously going to play, but it's more low-leverage games during those 2 weeks. But I'm going to go 2-0. And I guess we'll probably see Quick on Friday and Igor on Saturday. If I was coaching, that's how I would do it. But I'm going to go 2-0.
So The game Saturday scares me because Columbus is one of those teams that has a ton of speed and on a back-to-back, and you have to travel, even though it's not a ton of travel.
Such bullshit though that they're making us travel for that game one night.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's weird that they're making them travel. I don't know what the other schedule. MSG always has stuff going on, but they play each other 3 more times this year, 2 more times
there's a
after
Knicks
that
game
meeting.
Saturday. I'm actually going.
why.
It's Boston.
Yeah,
they play Boston.
So I want to lean 2-0. I feel like you need to get points in all of these games, but the Columbus game is so important. Like, I wish that was the Friday night game because that's the bigger one. Like, Pittsburgh has more games played than the Rangers and are behind them in the standings, so you have to win that game, but you also have to really get points, and you have to stop teams. Like, the game last night against Boston was huge because they wound up coming back and winning that in regulation.
Overtime was like a loss almost.
Yeah,
if we went to overtime.
Exactly. You can't just keep giving the other teams points if you're trying to catch them. But what I will say, and I don't know if you guys want to, reply before we end it. You got a 2-week break after this.
Igor twice.
Shesterkin better get both games. That's just me. I mean, if this guy is your number one, you're paying him a massive contract starting next year. You got 2 weeks off.
It's not like he's playing either. It's not like he's playing the break.
I'd be fine with
Saturday's game. And
I'd be
if he
fine
doesn't
with
get
that.
Friday, it's got to be 2 for Shesterkin.
My quick reply is I'd be fine with that. But I almost think it's more of like a in credence to Quick that I think Quick's good, good enough.
I think he is too, but I think play your number one.
I think in Laviolette's thing in mind, he's gonna be like, we're actually gonna get better goalie play if it's Quick one night and Shesterkin the other night. I'm not saying that I agree with that. I would actually probably go with you. You got to ride Shesterkin until he comes to you and says he needs a night off at this point. But I think in Laviolette's mind, he thinks so highly of Quick that he's actually saying it's better off for the team to go 1-1. But yeah, if we see Igor on Friday, we're probably seeing him 2 days in a row because, like you said, he can't be playing in Columbus before the break. You can't give Igor that Saturday game off going into the break.
I'd rather see Shesterkin both games. You haven't won in Columbus in 2 years. Go out there and fucking.
Well, he's definitely going Saturday. I don't think anyone's disputing that.
I wouldn't be sure. I'm telling you right now, I would not be shocked. I would be upset, but not shocked if we see Shesterkin playing tomorrow against Pittsburgh and Quick playing.
But
Saturday.
To give Laviolette a little credit, I knew what he was going to do last week. Like, I knew he was going to go Igor in Boston, Quick on Sunday, and then Igor on Boston again, because I'm kind of learning what Laviolette likes to do. So I'm pretty certain that Igor is going to get Saturday. I'm interested in if he gets Friday. I'm very interested in if he gets Friday because I would love that. I would love that.
Well,
I know he's not making the money yet, and it doesn't start till next year. But if you agree to that type of contract,
he could be making $1 million. You got
to play 2 nights in a row.
If he's your number one goalie and you have 2 weeks off coming up, and you have 2 games that have implications in the wild card standings in a season where you are chasing that wild card. You got your number one guy is paid to be the workhorse down the stretch. This is when you need him. So I don't see any scenario where it makes sense to not.
Do goalies play back to back? I know if you commenting.
Just look across the island at Sorokin.
Is he playing back to back
with Varlamov?
If you got Stones, yeah.
You got to play both. I'm sorry, but we'll talk to you guys next week. It's going to be a quiet week outside of Four Nations. We'll have 2 Rangers games coming up in the next 2 days. Hopefully they go into the break on a high note. A 4-game win streak heading into the break would be a nice way to start this final push of the season. So, boys, it's been fun. Four Nations will be fun. We'll catch up with Steven in Montreal next week.
I'm going to be speaking French next week, exclusive.
This would be a tough listen if that was going on.
It'd be a tough listen for me because I can't speak it.
All right. Well, we'll see how the Rangers fare the next 2 days, and we'll see how Team USA fares in the Four Nations. We'll see.
See you guys.